Okay, I wanted to take a moment to just reflect and talk about the Manosphere Netflix show that came out recently. I feel very, very passionate about the topic. I've spent the last, oh God, close to 10 years in men's groups, working with young boys. I worked with young boys for like 3 years, specifically young boys that were kind of more troubled, trying to find, figure out their path. And so I just kind of want to give my understanding of this because I think the manosphere conversation, as important as it is, I actually think it doesn't do the job right at solving what the actual problem is. And I think it's really important to describe it. So, what I think the manosphere uh, documentary does really well is it captures the just captures why, or actually just captures the issue behind having figures like Andrew Tate or Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit as like the popular figureheads right now. Because obviously, when you listen to their content, you can see that there are some really seriously toxic elements here. However, one thing that the documentary doesn't solve for is, at the end of the day, what is the actual problem here? It is that young men are struggling, right? And I think the documentary misses that a little bit. It kind of talks about what the issue is in red pill and like manosphere talk, but it doesn't really go to the heart of the real problem, which is young men, right? And and that young men really need mentors, and they've gravitated to them for a very particular reason. So what I really want to do is I want to, without picking sides or any of that, I just want to paint like a reality picture of what's going on for people like Myron, for young people, and like really what the disconnect is at heart. So I want to start with young people or young boys in particular and really understand like what is going through their mind. What are they feeling? What are they insecure about? Because that's the point we need to start and really, really deeply understand. So, I'm thinking about what it's like to be a young boy right now. That's 14, 15, trying to find their way, right? Now, there's different kinds. You might be the more academically oriented kind where, you care about going to university and are like care about having a good life. I would say that is more or less, if you depending on what university, depending on what school you go to, what environment you're in, that's kind of in the majority. But then if you start to go to like other places where it's public school systems, not getting as much funding, you'll start to notice, okay, the priorities and desires for young boys there start to shift a little bit. So the framework I want to kind of explore this topic with is through the environment and status framework. It's actually how, or the framework that I use to better understand human behavior like at its core. So I think, all of human beings, or you can kind of be understood through number one is what's their environment. I think this is pretty obvious. You've heard this before. Like who you are is a product of the five friends around you. You've heard a lot about the environment piece. The only nuance I want to add is environment isn't just the people you're around, like in school, your parents. The environment also is what social media do you consume. So it is environment is what are all the data points that are coming in to your brain, right? That's number one. And number two is status. I think this is what's missed a lot in this conversation. So status is in any environment that you're in, there's always status, something that's low status, something that's high status. And what that is really depends on the environment that you're in. If you go to San Francisco and you are in particular tech startup circles and environments, status there is very obvious. It is, how much money have you raised? Are you building a startup? Are you an AI? And then you can start to see behaviors of people that are within those environments, that things that they do are going to be in that direction of what's going to give them high status, right? Same thing with maybe a school, like let's say if you go to Richmond or you go to a private school, right? Here, if you look at the young boys there, or even like the young girls, a lot of them are a little bit more academically oriented, which means this, because the environment they're in, there's a lot more wealth, as a result of that, post-secondary is a very strong conversation. And because post-secondary is like a strong part of where people need to go, that's what status is. So how are your grades? Are you getting into top universities? So behavior then aligns towards that. Now, if you start to go to the public school system, and if you go to the ones that are in different income brackets, in different environments, you start to notice that starts to shift a little bit. I've actually been to a lot of these schools, and I can tell you the immediate difference between going to a high-income public school like environment versus a low-income one. And you can start to see that, okay, you know what? In some schools now, post-secondary is like a dream, right? The aim is let's figure out trade schools, let's figure out other ways to upskill folks. So not making a comparison between what's better, but I'm just kind of speaking of the realities of what I'm seeing. So academic rigor isn't really a top status thing in the environment. So if you think about it from that perspective of what are young boys going through in those environments? Like what's there? What are they noticing around them? So number one is probably their social media. It's very likely that what they're seeing is like things around wealth, things around making something for yourself, things about entrepreneurialism, or things about like making money. If you look at their school, if I look at, okay, what is seen as high status in a school, especially for young boys, it's probably going to be the good-looking young guy that's able to talk to a lot of girls, get the attention and approval of girls, right? And so you could see, okay, then the status there is, how do I get that? Because that's what they're observing, right? They're observing, okay, this person is getting a lot of approval, because really at the end of the root of it all, that's what we're all seeking. We're seeking approval. And so we look at examples of who is seeking maximal approval around us. And then if you're kind of in those kind of environments, you'll see, oh, it's these boys that probably, you could see like examples of other young boys that have approval from other women, from the people around them, and so on and so forth, right? So it's really important to paint that picture of where where the issue is for young boys. It also might be what they consume, again, like what they consume on Instagram, right? And this is where it's such a wild west, depending on the music you listen to, depending on the artist that you have. You could see why, like depending on the streamers that you see. So if people follow Speed on YouTube, and then they see Speed as someone they want to look up to, you can start to see, okay, the status there is, how can I then get online? How can I make content? So it really depends on kind of what are the incentive structures there. Now, keeping that in mind, this is where I want to now introduce Myron Gaines and someone like Andrew Tate, and why they're so prevalent now that we've understood kind of what's going on for young men. Myron Gaines is very interesting. I kind of want to just paint a picture. So if I just Google, I'm going to show you why I have this in a second. But if I just look up Myron Gaines on YouTube, a lot of his content, very political, very much like university debates. But here's what's interesting about Myron in particular is, if you listen to by the way, I've been listening to Myron Gaines for many years, not because I follow him or anything. It's just because I'm curious, like, what are young kids listening to, or why are people? I make a deliberate effort to actually like and heart as many red pill people as possible, because I want to understand, like, how do they think? Why do they do what they do? So just from following Myron Gaines for many years, his whole thing is, how can young people get fit? Or how do young boys get fit? How do young boys get women? And how can young boys make money? Right? Now imagine if you're a 15-year-old boy and you're trying to find, as I mentioned, like positive, like people who hold high status or have high approval in their eyes. You're gonna look at someone like Myron. He has, quote unquote, really good fitness, good looking dude, supposedly has women around him, is making money, right? So you can kind of start to see why it's so obvious that people gravitate to Myron. This is the exact same case with Andrew Tate, right? Same exact things. fit, talks about having a lot of women, and makes money. So if you look at it from that lens, you could see why it is that people, or young boys in particular, start to gravitate towards people like them. Now, a lot of people say, okay, one of the things we should do is we should get more healthy, quote unquote, content creators out there that talk about the larger scheme, like the larger spectrum of what it means to have masculinity and whatnot. The issue behind that is that never really lands for a lot of young boys, right? Like if you think about it, if we have a commentator online just talking about what it means to live a healthy masculine lifestyle, or what it means to be, it's like talking about those elements, you'll find that it doesn't really resonate a lot with young boys. Because again, young boys, when they're 15 or 16, they're not seeing the nuances of masculinity. They're seeing the more obvious ones, right? They're seeing like the physical appearances. They see how many women this person or man is able to attract. And so there's a lack of nuance in being able to see it. And then these guys like Myron have become really good at playing into the insecurity of a lot of these men. And I'm not sure if he does this intentionally, to be honest. And I'll tell you why I say this. Like Myron, I think Myron like genuinely believes a lot of what he has to say. And I'll tell you this, actually, there's a really good podcast here. I loved listening to this. This is, I don't know if you guys know The Flagrant. I think Andrew Schultz is actually a really healthy masculine man. He has like a really good, he has wife. And you can see just in the way he talks about women, it comes from a place of love. There is no status and all that. So I thought like this podcast was so illuminating to understand just the way that someone like Myron thinks. But what I want to do is I want to play this particular video. And I just want you to understand what's really going through their mind here. Listen close.
And yeah, so we just want guys to maneuver it in a way where
I think that's altruistic of you.
Yeah.
Like I really do. Like you're like, I want you to be safe. I want you to be protected. Like I'm going shark diving. You're like, bro, can I give you this fucking metal suit that you put on so just in case the shark does bite you, you're looking out.
Yeah.
You're actually looking out for these people. You care. My feeling is that you have a little bit skewed version. If you think it's pimp or be pimped, it's like, bro, you don't like. How can you develop a loving relationship with somebody if you're constantly going, am I pimping or is she pimping? That's dangerous.
Here's the thing: one person in the relationship, whoever cares less, has the leverage, and we want the guy to always care less. We want the man to always have the leverage.
Childish as fuck.
And you guys,
boom! Look at that, right? So that I think is a very powerful indicator of where just like all of Myron's worldviews, right? So same thing. We can apply the same framework of environment and status to Myron too. So if you look at where Myron is based in Miami, and Miami has a very strong clubbing, music, like party culture. It also attracts a lot of like wealth, and opulence is a very strong in that culture. So same thing, if you look at the environment, as a man in that environment, what are you noticing? You're seeing men with a lot of wealth get a lot of women, right? And so then what's going to be the driver so that people can get to high status? And then that's what you'll notice. Okay, that means that's exactly why Myron does what he does. Make a lot of money, be very fit, so you can attract those kind of women. And so I don't really deny what Myron is saying. I think there's a lot of truth to it, right? Especially in the environment that he's in. He's only exposed to the kind of women that are also kind of playing that game of trying to find the right man, of trying to find the man with high wealth, and whatnot. So his worldview is very limited to that, and that's where a big part of his podcast comes from. Now, my controversial take on this is, as I mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time liking a lot of Red Pill content just to see what that world is like. And what's interesting is I got both sides because I like both sides. I get the left, quote unquote, left wing interpretation of this Red Pill content and the right wing interpretation of this Red Pill content. And here's what I noticed. When I'm on the Red Pill side, the side to Myron or the side to Andrew that I see is not the side about women. It actually, what I see is a lot of their fitness content. It's a lot of Andrew or Myron being like, stop whining, go to the gym, be fit, don't complain, like focus on yourself. And that's the kind of content actually a lot of the young boys see. However, if you're on the left-leaning side of TikTok, what you're going to see is clips of Andrew Tate and clips of Myron saying the most absurd shit. Kind of like what we see in the Manosphere, right? And so what tends to perpetuate on the left-wing side of things is, Myron is a misogynist, Andrew is a misogynist, and there's like some truths to that, as you've seen, like how the way they look at women. But what a lot of young boys see is they see the other side, which is the ones focused on personal development, right? So I think my perspective here is, okay, what is the lesser evil? If these role models didn't exist, what are they looking at? And in my opinion, there's a lesser evil here, which is these men are focused on staying fit, on focusing on yourself, on generating income. And to me, that is a lesser evil. Like, they're alive. Otherwise, the other alternative is young boys taking this energy and putting it into extremely destructive things. The downside of this lesser evil is the views that they start to develop about women. If you listen to a lot of this podcast, maybe let me play a little bit more. It's actually quite shocking how much they see their relationship with women almost like a game. It's always like this cat and mouse they're trying to play, just like from what you noticed here. His whole point is young men, like men have to care a little bit less than the women. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, if you're in a successful, healthy marriage, and this is what Andrew says later on, you don't have to play games. Like, playing games is fucking exhausting. How long are you going to play this cat and mouse game for? Right? But he hasn't really clued into that, because his whole thing, if you look at, again, environment and status, his whole thing is about continuing to play the game, right? Continuing to be kind of the player, continuing to have power and status. When in reality, for healthy relationships, that doesn't really play out for too long. Right? I just want to play a little bit more, and then I'll continue the conversation, but just listen close.
You guys might not like hearing that.
Childish.
But we truly feel.
I'm not. These aren't new beliefs, bro. You're not telling me some shit none of us have ever heard. We all heard this from fraternity guys in college. I'm saying there's room in and I don't have a problem with a lot of the stuff you say. I just think there is room for growth. And you guys' refusal to acknowledge it almost kind of proves it to me, confirms it to me that you guys are not willing to grow right now. And that's fine. That's some ego shit. We're just saying there's room for growth. A very mature answer is, yeah, probably. If you say that to me, I'm sure I got room to grow. Y'all are literally saying, nah, we know how it is. We're in Miami. I bet if you go to Idaho and see only 2 bitches are getting flown out of Idaho, you'd be like, oh, the world isn't like this. We're just asking you to look and take an assessment of what you say and what you spread and be like, okay, maybe there's room for growth. And y'all ain't even willing to do that for an hour and a half.
I mean, I truly feel that
that's your opinion, bro.
Yeah, that's your opinion.
See what I'm saying?
I don't care. What you guys have a platform. You say whatever you want.
With men and women, one party cares less than the other does, and whoever cares less has the leverage. And we want the guys to always be in a position where the woman is constantly chasing them, not the other way around.
I think you're saying like
the man has to be in a leadership role where the woman feels. How do I say that she got the prize? The man has to be in that position, not the woman.
I think we both want to feel like we got the prize, though. And I think that.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of see just the kind of thinking there, and I understand the logic actually. So what he's trying to say is, you don't want the man to be like obsessed about the relationship and have that as the only thing, right? I would say what makes men attractive to a lot of women is that a man that has a mission, that has purpose, that has meaning in their life, that is pursuing something bigger than themselves. I think that's a very attractive thing, right? And it's less about, caring less about the relationship. I think that's really at the heart of what he's trying to communicate. And I think Myron just doesn't know how to, and as a result of just getting just doing a terrible job at this. Like, really at the heart of it, I think what he's trying to say is, women want to be in relationships where the man cares about purpose more than like keeping the relationship as the first priority. Because if the relationship is the first priority, that can feel very needy. It's like, I need the relationship to live a fulfilling life. What I think it should be is, hey, I'm living this purpose of life, of meaning. I'm working towards something beyond me, and that energy fuels everything around me, fuels my relationships, fuels my family, fuels everything. Now, that's the kind of nuance that unfortunately Myron doesn't have, and he's doing it from a ego place. Like, that same argument, you can look at it from a higher place or like a lower place. He's making that argument from a lower place, which is, you want to do that so that you can win, or that you can play the status games. And, oh God, he goes on to say things like, the cat and mouse game is really important, and that's what keeps women in check. Is if men have access, can always have access to multiple women, then it keeps women in check. So, a lot of troublesome opinions, to be perfectly honest. But the bottom line of what I wanted to say here is, I can understand why, one, these role models continue to exist, and I can understand why young men listen to them, right? So this is like the difficult part of this conversation where, these men are saying some really helpful things, like work on yourself. Like, if you listen to this whole podcast, a big part of it is, work on yourself. Be healthy. Don't chase women. Be the kind of person where women will be attracted to you. Like, don't play the game of chasing people. Like, those are all like really legitimate things to say. If you focus on yourself, focus on making money for yourself, focus on being healthy, focus on being fit, focus on being like a charismatic person that knows how to communicate well, women are going to be attracted to you. That's basically, I've listened to his content for a long time. That's 80% of what he's saying. However, I think the delivery is coming from a place of ego. It's coming from a place of power. It's coming from a place of like playing these weird control dynamics games. And I think that's the toxic piece that gets permeated the society. And I just wanted to kind of like really have that perspective in. So I guess like the question is like, what do we do about this? Like, the things like the Manosphere doesn't actually do anything to solve the problem. It kind of solves the problem of letting people, like, more people know that these guys are really like a little bit problematic. But then what's the other option for young men, right? Like, what do they need? What should they be going to? Who should they be looking at? So I don't know the answer to this, to be perfectly honest. But if I were to guess, the first question to ask is, who do you know in your life that's a young man under the age of 21? If you don't know anyone, then this conversation is probably not very relevant to you, because there's nothing at stake for you. But if you do know someone that is age of 21 and below, is a young man, might be a brother or a family or a friend, then I think, you are in a position to do something. I think number one is, can you employ curiosity about the kid? Like, just get curious about what he's going through. Just curiosity, number one. Number two is, if you're a parent or someone that's directly in a position to change the circumstances for the kid. Number two is, like, can you put them in a really solid environment? Like, boys clubs are really good ones. Like boys clubs, sports, anywhere where you have men coming together with other men in very healthy settings is very powerful. And sports is usually a really strong indicator of that. So can you put, your young man or young boy in sports? There's going to be adults there, like a coach. And I think it just builds really good habits. That's number two. I think this number three thing you can do is, can you help this kid develop a deeper understanding of themselves? And that usually comes from therapy or, some therapy. So is there an opportunity for you to put your son or your young brother or someone that you know with good male therapists that will just spend the time to get curious about who they are? The reason I say this is actually incredible. One of my favorite podcasts. I've listened to this so many times. It's a podcast between David, who's a great therapist in my opinion, and Andrew. And as you watch this along 2 hours, you can just see Andrew's walls start to come down. And you can see Andrew like genuinely changing his mind about things, right? I wish I had some timestamps here, but like, you look at all the comments and it's so healthy. It's like, wow, this therapist was able to ask such deep questions about Andrew and his life and why he does the things he does. And it comes from a way that it's not accusatory. It's not like, Andrew, you're a wrong person. It's just like, hey, I'm curious. And that's what therapists offer. It's a way to explore oneself without judgment. And I think that's just really powerful. Really powerful. And I think that's a big gift that young boys can have, right? Yeah, I think those are the things I really want to say. Maybe I'll play this actually video from Jimmy Carr. Let me see if I can find it. Let's go. Yeah, he had a really good one on Manosphere that I want to play. I played some part of this on my Instagram, but the second half I didn't play that I'd actually like to put on here. Let's see if this is the one. There we go.
What do I think of Manosphere? What, the Louis Theroux documentary? Well, I think it's very good that he made that. I think it's very interesting that they're mainstreaming that argument. Because you go, well, those guys are talking to young men. I don't like what they're saying to young men, but I like the fact that they're talking to young men. You have to respect there is some the intent there. The content's terrible, but the intent of talking to young men that are lost is valuable. But we just need better voices talking to young men. We can't marginalise them. Well, I think there's a lot of talk about toxic masculinity, and no one talks about the positives. You could be a king, or you could be a tyrant. You could be a warrior, or you could be a sadist. You could be an agent of magical transformation, or you could be a manipulator. You could be a lover, or you could be an addict. There's a positive side to masculinity, and we're not talking about that. We need to empower young men. I'm pro-gang, pro-drinking, pro-gambling. Let me talk you round. Okay, Okay, it sounds like... Okay, gangs are really fucking good ideas. They get some bad press because some of them do shoot people and deal drugs. But what I mean by a gang is, where should all men be? I'll tell you, all men should be with other men. Men check other men. Guys keep other guys in line. Right? It's good. You should be... Like, before, we want young men and women to get together, right? We want them to get together. Well, you can't start with a relationship. You've got to start with a friendship. Young men, you can practice on your friends. It's not gay. Drinking. I think drinking is essential because the risk to your liver is as nothing compared to the risk of social isolation. I've set up... Well, that's Scott Galloway. Brilliant Scott Galloway's line. I've set up a series of youth clubs all around the nation. They've got pool tables, they've got darts, they've got jukeboxes. They serve drinks. They're called pubs. They've been proven to work for men's mental health for the last 200 years. And I think we should open the doors to 16-year-olds. I think we should let 16-year-olds drink in pubs. My only proviso is not on their own. I think groups of 4. You should be able to be served if you can get 3 mates together, and then men check other men. I don't want them sat at home on their PlayStation. I don't want them drinking in the park. I want them with other men in a space where there's grown-ups around, and that's how you learn. That's what a society is. It's a good idea. And gambling, I'm very pro-gambling, but not this low-stakes bullshit, sports betting and casinos. Tell me what you want to do with your life. Tell me what you're willing to sacrifice, and then bet your life on yourself. That's a gamble, right?
Yeah, you guys get the point. I really love that. That really speaks to the heart of all this. Okay. I think those are my kind of big thoughts. Maybe actually one last thing I'll say is one of my favorite books of all time is this book called The Alabaster Girl. Let me see if I can just screen share this part. It's this book about this guy that just talks about his understanding of women, and he writes poetry of it. And why I love this book so much is, he was previously in this whole pickup artist thing, when he used to teach men how to pick up and whatnot. And then you can see, over the years, he's grown up and he's kind of grown past that. And this book is just about how do you witness and see beauty in everything, and women included, right? Doesn't matter how they look, doesn't matter who they are, just how can you be someone that constantly like witnesses beauty? And this whole book is about his witnessing of beauty, and it's like women are kind of the vehicle he uses to do that. And to me, that is like such beautiful, healthy masculinity, right? You're not trying to posture to anyone. You're just trying to be a witness to beauty. And when you're a witness to beauty for women, they're going to respond with being really beautiful, right? Again, I'm not even talking about physical. I'm just talking about just from a very like a spiritual sense. And I think that's really what's missing with guys like Andrew Tate and Myron. It's so sharp. It's so harsh. It's so like, be a man. Like it's a very sharp masculine energy. And women don't feel safe in that. It's not a very safe place to be. Like I think women, probably feel on edge. They feel very much like they have to be proving themselves all the time. And when you're in that, you don't get really the best out of women, right? Like I feel like women are the most beautiful when they feel the most safe, right? When they feel the most like they can be themselves, and they feel most beautiful around people that can witness that beauty. So I think like the most healthy way to be like a healthy masculinity is just, can you be a witness of beauty? Can you have like softness? To me, a strong masculine man is somebody that, maybe let me take some time to like talk about this. Like who is a really strong masculine? I think a strong masculine is someone that has a very compelling vision or future for their life. Like they know where they want to go, right? Or they might not know exactly where they want to go, but there's a search, there's a pursuit of something bigger than themselves. They're not in pursuit of wealth per se, or maybe it's like their pursuit of wealth because that wealth allows them to do something bigger. But a true masculine is someone that isn't like serve the ego, like I need to just like fulfill myself. I think a true masculine is, again, works towards something bigger, is in service of other people, service of people around them, has a really core knowing on who they are. Meaning when they're in the room, they don't need to pretend to be anybody else. Like they are great exactly as they are, and you can tell they don't need to prove anything to anybody. And I would say the last thing is, there's someone that can also express and witness beauty. And expressing beauty is actually really important. What I mean by expressing beauty is there art? Is there something, is a vehicle where someone or men can express like their soul, express, their song, not to be very cheesy, but what's that vehicle? I think really healthy masculine is able to do that, really express at their soul what's really important to them. For a lot of men, this maybe comes through sport, through MMA, through dance, lots of different vehicles. I think that's a strong masculine. This is unfortunate that doesn't sell. That doesn't get the eyeballs. If I look at Fresh and Fit, you get the eyeballs when you prey on someone's insecurity around women, around not looking good enough, not being enough, right? Not being good enough. That stuff just has like so much potency, especially for young men, and that gets the clicks. And it's hard to talk about this stuff that I just talked about, what a strong masculine is, because that doesn't really like pull on heartstrings, of young men. And I just wish it was a different case. But I understand the psyche of just how internet works, attention works, and that's just what it is. So really my commitment is like, I'm just going to be, so what matters in this conversation? I think at the end of the day, my take is how can I just be like the best version of myself, for me. And my hope is people will notice that, might learn a thing or two, and might want to replicate that for themselves, and that's all I can do. Really, the larger world and the larger psyche of where masculine consciousness is, there's only so much I can do. I can focus on folks in my community, empowering them as much as I can, and the rest is just really, how the universe should naturally unfold. Okay. I think that was the last part. Is there anything else I want to share here? Yeah, maybe I don't know who's listening to this. I'm just gonna keep. There's actually one more piece. It's this piece about about relationships and dating and about finding the right kind of women, and it's going to like offshoot what I just said before. It is pretty hard right now. If I just think about how things have changed culturally around what it means to find a man or a woman, right? Right now, a majority of people that are seeking other partners are doing it so on online dating apps. I mean, I was on the apps, right? That's how I met my wife, actually. And I think I just got lucky. But it's hard because, what are you noticing through apps? You're really missing everything else. You're missing the heart, you're missing the soul, and you're kind of going off of what you see physically. But I understand, like, what other options exist. I think a lot more folks are not spending enough time going outside, and I understand, like, it's much easier to get a dopamine hit on the apps, right? So, and I think that's really perpetuated the dating problem. So it's really hard for men and women to find like other high quality men and women. At the same time, what I'm finding very exciting is to seeing how people come together in communities. Like, for example, I go to this place called Calm, which is like a hot and cold sauna. And it's so cool to meet people there, right? I like to think that the people that go to those things are the kind of ones that care about their health, care about recovery, just care about themselves, right? And so when I go to those places, I actually tend to meet really awesome people, like really high quality people. Same with people in the dance community, really wonderful men and women, right? That just care about enjoying themselves, connecting with other people. So I would say, for people that are kind of exploring dating, especially for young people, online apps are doable, but it can't just be the only bucket, right? It is, where else are you putting yourself in communities? It's not as appropriate these days to go to a club and then like go to a group of women and try to like interject yourself in. It's a little bit disrespectful because women are coming out to be with themselves. And that's where the pickup, movement fails, where you're just kind of interrupting. Don't interject. That's like kind of shoving your own ego in there. And so how can you be in communities where you're going to find people similar to you, and kind of let serendipity work in your favor? So really, as long as you are working on yourself, you are staying healthy, staying fit, there's a way to support yourself financially, and I'm speaking to men or young men, and then you are in spaces that brings out the song in you, as I've talked about earlier, your soul, right? Then women are going to see you beyond your physical nature. They're going to see where you come alive, and that truly is like the most attractive thing, right? Okay, I think that's all I have on this topic. If you've listened so far, I appreciate you listening. Thanks.